total prize pool of over $160,000 awaits in the Collegiate Hearthstone National Championship. Are you prepared to team up, show your skills, and take home the trophy as Hearthstone champions? This spring, students from colleges across the U.S. and Canada will try to win their share of $160,000 in scholarship prizing in the Tespa Collegiate Series Hearthstone Tournament.
Welcome to week number 6 of the Hearthstone Collegiate National Championships. My name's Cora Georgiou, and I'm joined on the desk by Nathan, that's Admirable Zamora. And we have yet another fantastic week of Collegiate Hearthstone action coming your way. Let's go ahead and check out exactly how this tournament is going to work. So, for 7 weeks of Swiss, teams are split into one of 4 regional groups, and they have been playing 1 match a week. This is the 6th week of the Swiss play. Then, teams with 5 or more wins advance to a Swiss playoff bracket. The top 16 teams from the playoffs advance to a championship bracket, and this all leads up to the top 2 teams from each region advancing to the live national championship.
Yep, and even though they'll be collaborating in their teams and playing together, it is Conquest, as you know it. Each week they're going to submit 4 unique classes. Once they see what their opponents have brought to the table, they're going to choose one of their own classes and omit it from play in that series. It is a self-ban. From there, they'll play a best-of-5 match where the first team to win a game with each of their decks takes the set.
Conquest that we know and love, adding in the team dynamic and that self-ban, which we've seen some teams take advantage of, some teams not so much, but it brings an extra layer to exactly what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and check out our schedule for today. Today we are going to be tackling the South and West regions. Up first, it's going to be Georgia State versus Duke, then NC State taking on Texas, and finally today we are going to have a Cal v. Cal. It is an intra-school matchup. And then tomorrow it's going to be the East and the North regions. Penn State versus Sherbrooke, Carleton taking on Michigan, and Miami, Ohio will be taking on Notre Dame. So we have some jam-packed days. All of the teams that we are seeing today are 5-0 in their records. It is incredibly impressive level of play that we're going to be seeing.
The one exception to that, I thought so as well earlier, it's North Carolina and University of Texas. They're actually battling for that 5th win today. So there's teams that are 5-0. They already have themselves locked up, but we still have some ways to go in these last 2 weeks. So if you're at the 4-win spot, these next 2 weeks, absolutely crucial. Got to pick up a win.
Yeah, they are very, very important. So the first set that we're going to be seeing there are 5-0. Then there is one where the teams are fighting for that playoff spot, and it is going to be really interesting to see exactly how it plays out. Let's take a look at the standings, actually, we've got for the tournament thus far. As you can see, Georgia State is number 1 in the South region, and their opponents, Duke, are number 5. And then we've got Texas, UT Dallas, Mercer, Georgia, Texas, and UT Arlington wrapping up the top 8 thus far.
Yeah, it is important to note that some of the schools had a lot of teams competing in this. So you notice that there's 2 Texas teams right up there in that top 8. University of Texas Austin has 11 teams competing in this event. So a lot of esports stuff going on at that school. I know it's a big one. And not really too surprising to see a couple of teams make it to that peak performance in the South.
And then later today, we're going to see 2 UC Berkeley teams playing against each other. I believe there are 4 teams from UC Berkeley in the top 8 for that region. I believe 10 total teams from the school. So there are some dominating schools that we have been seeing over the last few weeks and that we will continue to see. And if you have any questions for us, if you want to let us know who exactly you're rooting for, tweet at Team Tespa. Go on Facebook /Team Tespa. If your question is chosen to be featured on the stream, then you will be the lucky recipient of the Dalaran Flame card back. You do not receive Admirable's fine artwork, but look at that cross-hatching. It's gorgeous.
It doesn't really do it justice, but the idea is there. It's like a wonderful pastel pink on it. It's got the flame. It's free.
It's free. Free's great.
It's one of my favorite card backs, and honestly, the only reason I can't really use that much is because it just distracts me.
It's
so
too
much.
beautiful. It's just
too beautiful.
too nice. It's like looking at yourself in a mirror. You just get distracted.
Some of us are modest.
Let's go ahead and take a look at our first match of the day. It is going to be Georgia State University, the number 1 ranked team in the South, taking on Duke University, the number 5 ranked team.
Yeah, and the lineups here looking way different than what we've seen in the last few months of this standard format, with Small-Time Buccaneer getting changed from a 1-2 to a 1-1. Not quite as resilient. Spirit Claws up to 2 mana from 1 mana. I'm curious how much that impacts the way that Shaman decks are built, but we've been seeing a lot of Druid and a lot of Priest start to creep its way in as those 2 cards got a little bit weaker. And these teams sitting at 5-0, maybe this is a time for them to simply experiment, push their boundaries, and see if they can get some experience in tournament play with some off-the-wall decks.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a weird time in the Hearthstone competitive scene. A lot of people not figuring out what exactly they want to play right now, and then obviously the expansion is going to be coming out soon. So this is really the peak time to figure out what these weird lineups are going to be. Fast facts go.
Hometown Atlanta, Georgia, size of the organization 400. Panther Gaming at Georgia State was officially founded March 2016.
Yes, it absolutely was, and there is a fireside gathering going on at Georgia State today. We can see the brother-sister duo that we actually saw on stream last week. We got a chance to talk to them, and in the background, I'm assuming, are going to be the adoring fans rooting them on. Let's take a closer look at the team roster. It is Jimbo Slice, Tracer Main, and Masuki, Finance, Business, and Bioinformatics.
Yeah, Tracer Main had an exam or something to study for, I believe it was last week. I don't quite recall. I don't think they were just main and Tracer.
I'm thinking he was putting in his placements, you know? The next Overwatch season just started. You're going to hit Grandmaster with Tracer. You got to get started early. But I guess we don't really know for sure. And closer look at the Duke University roster. It's Zerg, Fire, Wolfgang, and Atala the Hun. Computer Science, Electrical and Computer Engineering, and Physics.
He's a lot taller.
A lot taller than us, probably.
Yeah. Well, I'm 3'8", so.
3'8"? Okay. Yeah. I'm a smidge taller than that, but not much. Look at that man bun. That adds extra height.
I like it. Do you think it's one of the imitation man buns? Have you seen those?
Yeah, where they just like do a cut on the bottom and then just
it's like a hair extension thing. Yeah.
Oh no, I haven't seen the extension ones.
You put it in and like twist, and it has like these little like things, these spools that go into your hair, and it looks like a man bun. It looks like a genuine one, though.
Just sounds like you're trying too hard. I think that one was real. Let's take a look at the team bands. It is going to be Priest for Georgia State and the Shaman for Duke University. What do you make of this?
Well, Priest getting banned, it's pretty much wanting to target like mage, shaman, warrior. I was thinking of mage for some reason. Priest wants to target mage mostly, is really the goal there. But there's not too many wide classes across the board I think that their Priest is strong against. It's very weak to the warlock. It can be susceptible to the shaman. Maybe they're just not that experienced with it. Seems fine to tuck it away. And then shaman, always a strong deck, but again, these teams are 5-0. They might be wanting to test themselves a little bit more and try to get experience with decks that they're not used to.
Yeah, Shaman is definitely the biggest victim of the recent balance changes with Small Time Buck and Spirit Claws, so it makes sense if you were to eliminate Shaman from your lineup. And then Dragon Priest has certainly gotten a little bit more popular alongside Druid since the balance changes, so it makes sense that you would want to bring it, but if you don't have the experience with it, maybe you're not confident enough. And now there is one lonely Georgia State player left. Hopefully his teammate will return to him. There she is.
Yeah, Georgia State last week mentioned that they didn't want to relax as they moved into the 5-0 territory. They said they wanted to win the whole thing, and keep winning and don't stop winning. And honestly, that's a great attitude to have. Now, they've got a Sylvanas and a Manatide Totem in their opening hand during the mulligans. So this Shaman deck looks like it's much more aimed towards the later game. I'm curious if Sylvanas could mean that N'Zoth is in here. I'm
thinking it very well might. It's rare that we see a mid-range Shaman with Sylvanas and no N'Zoth in the later stages. And we did see Dr. Jikaninki's team last week brought in N'Zoth Shaman.
That's right.
It didn't, the N'Zoth never got its time to shine, really, but they did end up picking up a win with the deck. It's essentially just a Jade mid-range with a little bit more late game.
And look at Duke here. They're going to keep on to Mortal Coil and Doomsayer as a nod to the fact that Georgia State could be bringing an aggressive deck. And honestly, that's one of the big benefits of a format like this one with the self-ban in it, where there's a resubmission week to week. Is scouting your opponents is important, but sometimes it can definitely go against you. Here, Duke has two very weak early game cards, and they are likely to struggle to this Manatide Totem.
Yeah,
I would love to see that coined out here.
If the Manatide can pick up consistent value, then the Shaman can keep up with the natural card draw from Life Tap for the Warlock. And certainly the Shaman's early game is going to be stronger than the Warlock's, so it would definitely help them get ahead here. But it looks like they're going to opt for the Jade Claws instead, overloading them on the following turn. They could still coin out the Manatide then if they felt like it.
Yeah, this is really a nod to the idea that they have bigger plans with the coin. They don't simply want to get ahead a little bit and draw some extra cards. They feel like with their hand, they've got kind of enough already. And Sylvanas and N'Zoth definitely is some major swing potential where the value is concerned. So if Georgia State can just hang on and end up using that coin for the right situation, everything looks okay.
I'm trying to figure where the Lotus Assassin comes in, and I just can't figure it out. I just don't know where the Lotus Assassin is making its appearance in this game. But it's a great card. Right now, Sylvanas Windrunner is just a little bit better.
Yeah, this is a really interesting spot for Duke as well, because Imp Gang Boss looks fantastic in this particular spot, but their hand is lacking a threat right now. So without a threat, what do they actually do to this board? It's really important to get that presence down, but it's very important for them to find some gas as well. You know, simply having Emperor Thorson and discounting may not be enough.
Well, they could have life tapped this turn, but if they didn't find Mountain Giant or Twilight Drake, it would have just been better to play the Imp Gang Boss anyway. So this rolls nicely onto turn 4 into Doomsayer life tap.
That's what I'm thinking as well. Do you want to Doomsayer your own Imp Gang Boss, though? It's
That's
a
the
strong
problem.
card versus Shaman.
Well, the Manatide Totem's going to come down now and force a reaction from Duke.
I'm a little bit curious about the Manatide prior to the Jade Claws. Or I'm sorry, the Jade Claws prior to the Manatide, rather.
I don't know. It's interesting to see what they were expecting out of Duke. And the Jade Claws would have lined up really nicely into Dark Peddler, and, you know, maybe they didn't want to coin out Manatide because they're afraid of Doomsayer. But this still plays into it a little bit.
That's a good point, too. I mean, if they coin Manatide, it is straight into, like, a very strong Doomsayer turn. But that would get them through their 3-mana turn into the Jade Lightning as well. It's really curious opening from both teams here. It's just the way that their hands are lining up is kind of awkward. Like the Mortal Coil first.
Okay, Reno picked up.
Now this is where things start to get really tough for Duke. Is if that Dark Peddler doesn't come down in the next 2 turns, when is it actually hitting the board? And at the same time, what do they need to have?
That's one of them.
To start making some progress. And so that's what the life taps have been all about, and what their turn 3 thought was about. I mean, sure, Imp Gang Boss is great, but do they just need to find something better? Is their question.
Well, fortunately for them, that one life tap did get them into the Twilight Drake. Certainly very susceptible to Hex, which you need to be aware of against a mid-range Shaman, but great to have it nonetheless.
Twisting Nether's a great pickup here, too. I mean, now the threat of them getting hexed is very alleviated. They get to have Twilight Drake into Emperor Thorson into Twisting Nether. So all that tempo that a big removal spell could cost them can be easily made back up. You don't want to burn your Twisting Nether that soon, but this is a great opportunity, I think, for Duke to start making some headway.
There's already one combo piece in hand with the Leroy, so if the Emperor were to come down, then the combo is active for Duke. The Reno Jackson's actually really interesting in this matchup just because it's not quite as effective, because we see Bloodlust in Georgia State's hand. If Georgia State is going to go for lethal, they're going to be going for lethal from a very high life total on Duke's side. There's not a lot of burn in Georgia State's deck, but the Bloodlust is going to enable a board of small totems and non-threatening minions to do a lot more damage. So that maybe Duke doesn't feel threatened to Reno.
I think Duke's number 1 thought here was how they get punished by Flame Tongue Totem. Flame Tongue would certainly be pretty bad for them in this spot, but if that's the case, Georgia State, you know, they're forcing 2 of their mana on 5 mana. It's a very important turn for Azure Drake. It means the board will be clear if they don't have a reload for the Emperor Thorson. I think everything works out even if they run into Flame Tongue Totem here. Plus, it's just is an extra card really worth foregoing a 4/9 on the board?
It's certainly tough to say, but the 4/9, well, it runs into Hex. It challenges incredibly well. I think that was the correct choice. I'm really interested in the Healing Wave tech in Georgia State's list. Now that Small Time Buccaneer has been nerfed, Spirit Claws has been nerfed, it seems like the aggression in the meta has gone significantly down. And we're seeing Jinyu Water Speaker in their hand as well. I'm wondering if maybe just 2 copies of Jinyu is enough anti-aggro healing. They seem to disagree. They went with the Healing Wave as well.
Could just be a nod to how they intend to use their life total as well. You know, if they still have Spirit Claws in here also, that's a lot of damage you could potentially deal yourself. Just, you know, having the kind of a catch-all card for those situations as well as aggro is what I'm guessing the Healing Wave's there for. It's not like aggro is extinct. It's just not quite as strong as it was. And here, the Faceless Shambler really changes the way that this looks. I mean, prior to this, this was Windmill Slam Emperor Thorson on the table. But now, getting Dark Peddler down.
Tentatively slam the Faceless Shambler.
Yeah, that looks
and
good
life
to me.
tap. Oh, no, they want to drop that Peddler. Okay.
Yeah,
They've got all the threats that they need.
I like the Peddler a lot here because it's working right towards the Leroy as well. Say they pick up Power Overwhelming with that. Suddenly they've discounted Leroy and Power Overwhelming. Now they have access to potentially double Power Overwhelming plus the Faceless Manipulator. I think I like the Peddler first.
Plus, it just gets the extra 2 power on the board.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Sylvanas is
This is what it's supposed to do.
pretty good here.
It's supposed to make you look at the board and go,
This is kind of awkward.
yikes,
I don't like it.
it's not very good. But this is 10 uncontested damage for Duke now. And so this should be an opportunity for them to look at this and really turn the corner here. Emperor Thorson is enabling 14 direct from hand at a very low cost, 4 mana. This should be the giddy-up turn.
Yeah, Duke is just a few points shy of lethal this turn. The Sylvanas is certainly making things a little bit awkward, but
There's sometimes you can just
I
ignore
don't know that even matters, yeah.
Typically, one of the best times to start to turn the corner on your opponent for damage is when you have a significant amount of damage out, and your opponent hasn't affected your board state. That is one of the best times to start pushing for damage. If they didn't do anything last turn to your minions, what are they going to do next turn?
Yeah, the Sylvanas certainly would cause you to have some awkward trades, but if you simply choose not to trade, then they can't be awkward.
Yeah, it's like, what is this 2/2 or the 1/1 doing? I mean, certainly there is a fear of Flame Tongue. Flame Tongue
Yes.
is very real, and Bloodlust at this point also a concern in their mind. But if they had turned up the heat and pushed 10, I think they got it locked. Wow, nothing to the board
Really?
as well.
They are very afraid of this Sylvanas.
That's a concerning play because that's a way for them to outright lose.
You would have had discounts on the Leroy, the Soulfire, and the Power Overwhelming, making Faceless Manipulator just an automatic out.
I'm very surprised by that because now they're in a really weird spot. They just really didn't want the Sylvanas to get significant value, but
But if you can
can't twist
give
another
your
this board.
opponent some value while you're giving yourself more,
I don't know if that's the case, honestly. Like I mean that's exactly the point you're making too. Is the Emperor Thorson, sure, it could go over to Georgia State's side,
but you have already discounted 6
Emperor's
cards.
done the job at that point.
That's all you needed.
And Sylvanas wasn't dead on board. It had to get through the 4 power taunt first,
And then you
So-
have the Nether to follow up and clear off whatever they may have stolen.
Right. In this situation, it looked like they tried to get greedy and hope Georgia State overextended right into that Nether. When you have 6 health left on the board, it's very hard to twisting Nether. Oh, look at this. They're trying to give over the Doomsayer.
Ooh. Okay. Cheeky.
Well, that's
Didn't
not going to work. This is an interesting fork, though. Like, this turned out a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be. So their plan was quite literally try to feed the Doomsayer over to the other side of the board and get enormous value from it. If that didn't work, play the Emperor Thorson, make your opponent make a decision. Do we kill the Emperor Thorson? Do we kill the Doomsayer? Do we yield initiative? Like, this is kind of awkward, honestly.
That was a really interesting setup. Yeah.
The issue I have with this is that Flame Tongue in a weapon or Jade Lightning or Maelstrom Portal plus Spell Power, a
Just
lot
clears
of things,
everything.
A lot of things can hurt this board strong enough. So this might be a bit of a fancy play.
Well, Georgia State is in a bit of a bind. It's another awkward board state for them to deal with.
It's probably sack initiative, honestly. I don't really see a way for them to.
You
profitably
can't leave
get
the
this
Emperor
done.
up again.
Yeah, I think looks to me like it's honestly 9 to face, maybe 11 with the Jade Claws. I don't know if they want to give up the minion though.
I think it's a 4/4 Jade. Well, they only get 9 from the healing wave.
Simply trying to protect themselves from the fear of 24 bursts.
Yeah.
I think it's
Which is
wise.
very real fear.
That card's not going to do much else this game, but suddenly Duke has initiative. That's the dangerous part for Georgia State here. And Duke should know at this point that there's probably nothing that really affects the board in Georgia State's hand. I mean, we're talking
Flame
3
Tongue
damage.
Totem, Jade Lightning.
3 damage would have kept something on their board around, and they chose not to do that. They chose not to hex. They chose no buffs. probably a hand just like it is. Minions and situational cards.
Yeah. You can maybe expect a Hex, but not even Hex in the hand for Georgia State. Meaning the Mountain Giant slams on the board uncontested at this point.
Yeah, and with the life tap here, honestly, it's very rare that I'm feeling that a player at 10 is just really safe. But I think all the reads they've gotten thus far, that they have to be pretty safe, and they feel it too. This is wonderful. Oh, they're going to play the Reno anyway.
It's a 4/6 body.
Yeah.
Might as well.
Good point.
Those Emperor discounts are
You get both.
pretty good.
Pretty brutes.
Pretty brutes. Yeah, I don't think there was a way that Georgia State could have killed them this turn. The only burst in mid-range Shaman is Jade Lightning plus weapon.
Yeah.
You saw one Jade Lightning already, so...
I would expect to see no Pirates given the small-time Buccaneer change.
Yeah.
So
It's the reason we're seeing so much Jade
like,
Shaman.
no weird like South Sea deckhand charge weapon flame tongue
Yeah.
kills. This looks like a desperation act.
Yeah.
Trying to get the most stuff on board to have Bloodlust clean the rest of this up. And
It's
that's
12
a
on
huge
board.
damage. 12 plus 14 in hand.
Well, you could Cabal Courier and try to find something. You
Looks like
can't
a
play
Shadow
the
Flame turn to
Abyssal and
me.
the Leroy. Well, you could Cabal Courier first and try to find some form of lethal.
They're definitely out there. I mean, Cabal Courier would leave you with 7 mana, and Leroy Power Overwhelming Soulfire is only taking 4 right now.
Yeah, so you would need to find 3 mana,
4 damage.
4 damage. Power Overwhelming. Mind Blast.
Soulfire.
Yeah.
There's bound to be more out there. I just can't think of them right now.
Nope, they're going to decide to play it a little bit safe.
Abyssal Enforcer looked fine as well this turn. They're going to leave up some damage, so it looks like Bloodlust was the one thing they weren't necessarily thinking about.
Inner Fire would have been 2 more damage. So close.
Irina was at 4/4, right?
Oh, you're right. It took the 2 damage from the
Yeah, yeah.
Maelstrom. All right, Inner Fire would have been 0 more damage.
Looks good to me, though. I think either way they slice this, they got the edge. The big one was the Doomsayer turn. That turn succeeding was honestly fairly unlikely, and it just... That's the payoff.
It was an unconventional turn, but it worked out for him.
This Bloodlust is simply to clean the board.
That is the angriest sound. The Bloodlust.
That's
Oh,
got to
man.
be the saddest Bloodlust.
That's not what you want to see Bloodlust for in this game.
In a
I said
while,
it earlier. You know, the Reno sometimes isn't as effective because you played onto a board of smaller minions and they just Bloodlust and kill you that turn. But in this case, the Warlock was able to put on enough pressure and stall Georgia State enough that, well, 5 mana, clear off your 8/6 and your 4/4.
2 damage off lethal. For Duke. I mean, it looks like they just got it in the bag, though. It's just yet another turn of strong plays. They just got so much value.
I wonder.
If you Abyssal, you go down to 25. You leave 6 on their board. You've seen 1 Bloodlust. You know there's no burn.
It is kind of a weird turn. I mean, leaving your opponent with a 5/2 is
It's not ideal.
not comfortable. I don't think it's getting lightning stormed.
Oh, really?
And down to 13. That looks like that'll do it.
Yep. Georgia State foregoing the Jinyu, just putting down that taunt. They could not do both, unfortunately.
Yeah, all smiles.
Well, that's
Multiple ways
really
to
going to do it
Yeah.
now.
Just count it, double check it, triple check it, quadruple check it. The
Santa
damage
Claus,
is
that
there.
lethal. And that is going to be game number 1 in the favor of Duke University.
That one Doomsayer just changed the scope of the game. That was their big payoff card this game. You know, the Reno definitely helped them get the close, but wow, that was,
really
that was
like
a
to go
very
back
strange
and-
way to play against the Sylvanas.
I'd really like to go back and look at just those 3 turns. The Sylvanas being played, Duke deciding to do nothing, and then responding the following turn, trying to bait more minions on board for the twisting. Now, that not working out, then plan B being Doomsayer and try to have them steal it.
They wanted to feed the Doomsayer into the Sylvanas, and it was a 50% chance, and when that failed, there's also the minuscule chance Georgia State just no damage in hand.
Yeah,
very rare
true.
that you see that, but that's what happened this game. That was an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, it certainly was. So that's going to be game number 1 over to Duke University. They're now left with their priest and their mage up against the druid, the shaman, and the warlock. The druid and the mage lines up very well for the druid. If it is a Reno mage, we have been seeing a lot of tempo mage, though.
Yeah, tempo mage certainly looks like one of the stronger aggressive decks now that Small Time Buccaneer has taken that big hit. Suddenly you have multiple easy ways to clear it, not just limited to Arcane Blast or using a couple of resources. So the Arcane Missiles is going to kill it. Flamewaker's going to have a much easier time. Just your hero power in general, able to take it out. It seems like that's the aggressive deck to go to right now, since it can be very punishing to both Druid and to Warlock.
Yeah, it seems like in the face of the balance changes, a lot of teams have simply elected to take those pirate decks out of their lineups. If these are both Jade Shamans, that's, the Shaman is the only way that we could be seeing the Small Time Buccaneer in either of these lineups. There's no Warriors. So maybe it's just they haven't had a lot of time to test since the balance changes. Maybe they're just thinking that mid-range and control decks are simply going to be stronger after the changes have happened.
I mean, even some of the Warrior decks have started to cut Small Time Buccaneer, and they simply roll with Arch and Horse Rider in that slot. And that looks like Aviana Coon Druid.
That looks like a bucket of fun to me.
And it looks like a Reno mage that could be Freeze Mage.
We have actually seen a fair amount of Freeze Mage on Trinity. It's sort of teams have sort of been dipping their toes back into the Freeze Mage.
Well, it's good matchup for against Priest. It's great against Warlock. I think it fares fairly well against the Jade Shaman decks. They don't really get on the ground quite as fast as you'd hope. Georgia State giving the same nod that Duke did last game, which is if this is Tempo Mage, we need that Doomsayer.
Duke threw a Frostbolt and got another Frostbolt, so I'm thinking it's Freeze Mage.
The Loot Hoarder, in addition to the second Frostbolt, is a dead giveaway. This is definitely Freeze Mage, and this is something that I haven't really seen in play too much lately. But against Druid, this is sort of a scary matchup. Their goal is to Alex Strauza to set to 15 on Georgia State's side, and then follow up with a lot of burn spells to finish the game. Georgia State happens to have an armor-generating hero power, and there's a likelihood that Feral Rage is in the deck as well. So post Alex Strauza, they could be sitting around 23, 25 life. That is a much more daunting task for Freeze Mage to accomplish.
The one reprieve for the Freeze Mage is that Combo Druid takes a very long time to set up. You need to find Eviana, Coon, Malagos, draw all of your burn spells. You can have to draw through your entire deck to find these things. So the Freeze Mage likely will have time to cycle through their own deck, try to find Alex Strauza, try to find Emperor, and then with the addition of the Evolved Kobold, there is a lot of damage represented now in the Freeze Mage deck.
Yeah, plus they also have the defensive Ice Block at times. So even through a big combo turn, they could potentially live through what Georgia State throws at them. So a lot of this is simply a race to Georgia State getting their combo pieces versus Duke landing an Alex Strauza with an Ice Block down. If they're able to land an Alex Strauza with an Ice Block down, I think that's really the winning key for them this game.
Well, Duke has had a pretty strong start, all things considered. The Freeze Mage is looking very strongly for that early cycle, Arcane Intellect, Accolade of Pain, and then the finishers. So Alex Strauza, Emperor Thaurissan, and then the burn.
Yeah, this is one of the matchups where Emperor Thaurissan may not be a big key, but certainly a welcome draw. Anything to alleviate the amount of mana pressure that your hand has is a big deal.
It's a heavy hand so far.
It really is. 2 Blizzards is a lot.
And these freezes are going to be a lot less useful against a combo deck.
Very impactful against Druid, that's for sure. Certainly can buy time, but you got to get the right setup.
You can't freeze the damage from hand.
No sirree, Bob. It's also hard to stop him from drawing cards.
My name's Cora, Nathan. Nice try.
I pictured just being a third caster, Bob.
Bob,
here.
just
He's
sitting
been
in the
here
middle.
for like 6 weeks.
We just never acknowledged
He's just never
him.
said anything.
Oh my God, the ultimate troll. Poor Bob.
This looks like a good Acolyte turn.
Yeah, from Duke's perspective.
Must be a way.
They could also just throw down barrier this turn or ping off the Blood Mage and then hope to Acolyte and Hero Power it themselves in the following turn. Depends on how much value they really think they need from this Acolyte.
Yeah, there's a couple things that are going on with the Acolyte. I'm sorry, with the Blood Mage here, which is, does Duke even really want to give Georgia State another card right now? Ice Barrier looks like a totally fine play into that. But what does the spell damage really represent against Duke's deck right now? Very little. Outside of Living Roots onto the Acolyte of Pain, it's really doing nothing.
Yeah, at this point in the game, it's just a 2-mana cycle.
Yeah, I would have liked to see the Acolyte of Pain. They're worried about not getting the full draw potential from it, but something to think about is how it throws off Georgia State's turn. If they're not playing Druid of the Claw, if they're not playing Azure Drake, and instead they're killing your Acolyte of Pain, that sounds like a win to me.
It's just been so long since we've actually seen anybody other than the die-hard pros bringing Freeze Mage. Reno Mage essentially became Freeze Mage for the last, several months since Gadgetzin came out. And it was, I don't know if it was an easier deck to play. It was very different. It played very different. Whereas Freeze Mage takes a lot of patience. Reno Mage, you can curve out, find Kazakus, find Reno, win the game from there. Freeze Mage plays very differently. Yeah,
the major dynamic difference is that Freeze Mage oftentimes is wasting its cards simply to buy time. It's not a very value-oriented game plan in a lot of games. But with Reno Mage, value certainly needs to be a major consideration of yours. You don't have the same style of reach, and you're not quite as all in on the same game plan. So I am curious to see Duke kind of stretching that and playing that more value-oriented game. To me, that speaks in perhaps a little bit of an experience with Freeze Mage. I learned a lot of this matchup simply by watching 6-0 and laughing play the deck and talk about it, and they are almost never concerned with value. Their main goal is just to hit the earliest combo turn possible.
It's a really interesting experience. As I've played Freeze Mage, I've casted a lot of Freeze Mage, I've watched a lot of Freeze Mage, but until you've actually spoken with the players who have played this deck, thousands of hours of this deck, like laughing. I sat down with dude 7597, who's actually in this collegiate tournament, and he is an incredible Freeze Mage player. And the way that he talked through his turns is just, they think 3, 4, 5, 6 turns ahead, and just try to imagine what they can draw that can get them out of these situations. Yeah. It's really fascinating.
So it's one of those decks where you have to think about not just the cards in your hand, but the cards in your deck. And Amnesiac just said that once when he was talking to me when he was talking about Rogue. He said, you play with the cards in your deck as well. You have to anticipate how your draws are going to change your turns. And that's what makes the deck so hard to me. Not necessarily the turn-to-turn basis, but accounting for all the different draws and what they mean.
You have to account for 30 cards instead of 7. Yeah,
oftentimes with aggressive decks, until you're all in, you really are just thinking about how you make the most of your cards that you have.
Yeah.
Combo decks are definitely different in that aspect. This is where suddenly that Acolyte's just looking like it's almost stuck in the hand.
If they'd gotten it down on turn 4, maybe it would have been a little bit more useful. But it does find a spot here with the block.
It would have either threatened multiple draws, or it would have thrown Georgia State off Azure Drake.
Yeah.
We'd have just a completely different game right now.
It would have gotten checked by the Living Roots, but that would have delayed Georgia State. Which, maybe
also
that would have given Duke an open Emperor turn.
Also kind of just like a win. In this particular matchup, does Georgia State even want Living Roots and Acolyte?
It represents 7 damage, but there's a Malagos on the board, so you'd rather not. If you can force Georgia State to use several of their burn spells, then even if they draw Eviana, Kun, Malagos, maybe they don't have Living Roots and Moonfire that they need to be able to kill you that turn.
Yeah. This is really an important facet here, too. Georgia State not really getting a ton of pressure on, and Duke certainly is able to fight this. But their armor total is now at 9. Georgia State used that Feral Rage on turn 6, knowing that armor was probably their most important facet in this matchup. Until Duke can check the board, they're not going to be able to make headway on that armor total. That's going to delay the Alexstrasza power spike by a lot. This is trouble for Duke.
Must be a way.
To be fair, there's not a lot more board presence in Georgia State's deck. Once you get past the Drakes, yes, there's Gadgetzin in hand, but 2 Doomsayers, they're not coming down this game. Duke's never trying to get on board, really.
It'd be great in a turn where they maybe anticipate Emperor Thorson or Alexstrasza. That would be a good time to use those Doomsayers. And eventually they're going to need hand space, too. So I am curious when they fit those in. Because for all intents and purposes, they're pretty dead cards in this matchup.
Yeah, that would definitely require some advanced hand reading.
Yeah, maybe into like an Acolyte of Pain.
Yeah.
If in like the last 3 mana spent from Duke.
It's the most value they're going to get from it.
Or something like. Those are reasonable, but you can see Duke starting to struggle with where do they actually go with this. This is how little their life total means to them right now. Is they go, you know what, we can check any board state. Let's just start to work on the armor total. And honestly, this is something they probably have to do to get to that Alexstrasza turn. Which means that Georgia State can't Doomsayer into an Alexstrasza turn. It's hard to Doomsayer just your own minions. That's
when you've got board presence. I mean, these Drakes check the Alexstrasza as it is. So maybe the Doomsayer is just more of a risk that Georgia State doesn't want to take.
Yeah, that's great news for Duke in a lot of those instances, though. It means that those Blizzards and those Frost Novas become extra turns for them. That pressure just immediately gets taken off the board.
Well, you know what? I'm glad we're seeing Freeze Mage now. Because when Ice Lance moves to the Hall of Fame, I don't know that it will be a playable deck anymore.
Yeah, we'll have to see what comes out in the new set, of course. You know, Lunar Visions is typically a great card, but this is an overdraw.
Overdrew. Oh god, Pinpango flashbacks. Oh my god, Yogg-Saron, no!
Wow, that could be a really huge deal. Yeah, they just burned the Wild Growth. Oof. They should have burned the Wild Growth first. Maybe they didn't want to burn the Wild Growth first. They just wanted to burn now and then have 9 cards in their hand. I don't know. That's a weird turn.
If that had been Aviana, Kuhn, or Malagos, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what their overall like macro game plan is here. Like, do they need combo to win? I guess is a good question. You know, armor total is effectively a way for them to win. If they get to a high enough life total, Duke just won't have the damage.
But there is also, you know, if Duke clears Georgia State's board, Georgia State goes all in on burn, tries to pop block, Duke can defensively Alexstrasza. Then if Georgia State has no more minions left and has no burn, it's possible that Duke could take it from there. But with the combo in deck still, it's very unlikely. Man, we could have seen a Yogg-Saron this game.
It's been a while. That card definitely is creeping up a little bit more too.
People are.
Look at how attention driven they are to that armor total. They know they need to chip it away.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Loot Hoarder and the Acolyte guarantee at least 2 draws.
Well, now there's an interesting opportunity for Georgia State. Do they feel like Overdraw is something they may want to go for? Nope.
Nope. They would rather just...
just gonna pop the block.
Yeah, hit face for 12 with the swipes. You know, sometimes you don't need 5 spell damage. 2 just might be enough.
2's a lot. They pop it at 1 too, so Duke is in a heap of trouble. Notice that they had Ice Block down. They didn't get the Alexstrasza turn. And this was simply from the 2 Azure Drakes there. That Acolyte, the second Acolyte joined hand, that could have been taken care of. They could potentially had Emperor down this game. They played this game very slow and not putting a lot of pressure on Druid in terms of clearing their minions, so that they have to pressure you back. Usually ends up in the Druid's favor.
Well, and Duke had, 3 forms of board freeze in their hand. Obviously, the Blizzards are hard to fit in because they're so expensive, but Duke could have used Frost Nova last turn, trying to hedge their bets against burn from Georgia State's hand. I mean, maybe they don't have a great read on what Georgia State is playing at this point, but there's only so many things that this deck can be.
Right. I mean, honestly, there's been almost no indicators other than the fact that it's probably not Jade. They haven't seen a single Jade card. So does that mean it's Aviata Kuhn? Does that mean it's
Cthulhu?
It's Cthulhu build? Does that mean it's just a Gadgets and Cycle build where
maybe
you
have Arcane Giants and Yogg-Saron?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can go on. The Yogg-Saron's probably the most telling part. But here, this Ice Block doesn't matter. They're not going to have time to land the Alexstrasza because they have to check 3 different fronts. They have to freeze the board, they have to freeze Georgia State's face, and they have to worry about damage from hand.
I'm really interested. I think the barrier's better, yeah. You kind of need to hope that you can pull out 2 more turns now. Yeah,
they're hoping that there's just no damage from hand here for Georgia State. And so that Moonfire is just going to simply wrap it up. I like the smile on their face. They were like, ah, dang it. If it was hero power, honestly, they might have gotten out of that situation.
It's possible. They would have been back up to 8. Eventually, maybe they would have drawn Flame Strike. I don't know.
Yeah, if they live through that turn with Ice Barrier, what ends up happening is they get to go freeze the board and then Ice Block. Then they're at a safe life total. They have Ice Block down. Maybe they get to land Alexstrasza. That's the big game plan there. But popping the block prior to Alexstrasza is like the major game plan for Druid. If you have board at that point, it's almost done.
Well, turns out the burnt Yogg Saron didn't change anything that game. It's unfortunate, but maybe it's a little bit telling of Georgia State's mindset. We saw them on stream last week. They won their series, and they said that they didn't want to let up at all. They wanted to practice and be incredibly well prepared going into these next few weeks of competition. And now we've seen, well, one rather large mistake from them. Maybe it's just all getting to them a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, they had a game plan crafted there at some point. I'm just curious if that was the turn to really use the Lunar Visions. I mean, maybe they have it mapped out. Maybe they have some sort of read there, but overdrawing cards is typically a mistake. It's tough to justify that.
Well, it worked out well for them. Regardless, the Druid picking up the win against the Freeze Mage. So now Georgia State left with the Shaman and the Warlock, and Duke still needs to find a win with the Freeze Mage as well as the Priest.
The Shaman matchup, I think, is going to be interesting because we saw the Healing Wave from Georgia State.
Yeah.
Healing Wave can completely negate what the Alexstrasza has done. They also have the Jinyus in there. So if they can get bored and they can deal with Alexstrasza and heal themselves up after that situation, that's going to be a big key for them. Their game plan is effectively the same, which is try to get Duke into danger territory prior to that point, but they don't have quite as much burn. They don't have quite as much card draw, and they don't have mana acceleration. So it's a much harder thing, I think, for them to accomplish than for the Druid to do. And they also just don't have a natural armor total. So
yeah, it's going to be a lot slower for Georgia State. They don't have the mana acceleration. They don't have the draw, like you said. They're going to have to ramp their Jades the old-fashioned way by taking some time to do it. And Jade Shaman has a lot of reactive cards. It can be very tough.
That's about the worst opening hand I think they could get with double Maelstrom Portals. The only things those line up well into are Loot Hoarders, and that's a nominal lineup. So Georgia State, they're in for the long haul, and they pick up a second Jade Claws as well. The second Jade Claws actually does give them some ability to start pressuring. This is going to ramp their Jades really hard, but they got a long way to go. 2 Maelstrom Portals are dead.
That's not what they wanted to see. At least they picked up the Jade Spirit and the second Jade Claw, so they have a little bit of ramp for the Jade Golems here. It's just, it's going to be very slow, but that's what we were expecting from the mid-range Shaman.
Yeah,
So-
it's not a blistering pace for them. They're okay with taking their time and finding the right spot.
Jade Claws comes down on 3. That does mean Georgia State will not have access to the Jade Spirit on their following turn.
Yeah, it's looking like they're going for turn 5 Jade Spirit, turn 6 something big, turn 7 Jade Chieftain. I think that's their game plan right now, and that gives Duke a lot of time.
Yeah, Duke is picking up some really fantastic resources. Emperor already, they've picked up both secrets, 2 Ice Lances. They're getting the burn together. And Alexstrasza in this is going to be exactly what they want to see.
Wow. Aside from very easy to use draw spells, they pretty much have the hand that that's going to crush this game.
That's exactly what they're looking for. Maybe the second block wasn't ideal, but this is still looking very nice.
Coin here. So if they're going to play a draw card, they do need to actually do something else. They just had too many cards in hand. Huh.
Well, Georgia State can find some use from the Maelstrom Portal. Or they could get down the thing from below this turn, Jade Spirit on 6 into Chieftain on 7.
I think whichever one provides the most pressure is where they need to go with. Again, Maelstrom Portal is just not pulling the weight that's necessary this game.
If you have 2 free mana ever, you could use it for a 1-drop.
Yeah. Georgia State's first 10 points of life don't really matter that much because they anticipate getting hit by Alexstrasza. 10 is where it starts to get a little bit dangerous. Your opponent can use 1 burn spell and force you to heal and then follow it with the Alex. So that is a consideration for Georgia State. But if they have a large enough board, that's where that life total definitely doesn't matter as much. Is when they're in that 20 range, but they're threatening to push through for lethal. Duke saw Bloodlust in game number 1 as well, so that is going to change the way that they approach some of their turns.
They're going to need to be a little bit more careful this game.
I think Velo is fantastic here. It's tough to just bite the bullet and pay 5 mana for it, but
So how much of the Freeze Mage burn can you really warrant using for removal?
That's a good question. You know, I'm by no means a complete expert on this deck, but with 2 Forgotten Torches, I imagine there's Evolved Kobold in here. I'd be pretty shocked if there wasn't. They still have quite a bit of reach potential. The question is, how much of their burn can they afford to use in a certain amount of time? Like after a certain duration, they need to just have the critical mass to end the game. And this hand, the one thing it is lacking is AoE spells. No Flame Strike, no Blizzard, no Frost Nova.
Well, we haven't seen Flame Strike in the build yet. I mean, is it possible that Freeze Mages have decided to cut Flame Strike? I could see running 1 only, but no Flame Strikes altogether. That would be a little bit strange.
Yeah, I've seen some builds with 0, but I think that's more of a nod to metagame, I think, than anything else. Duke is going to be fighting against this style of board very often. You know, Dragon Priest is out there, Dragon Warrior's out there, Mid-Range Shaman's out there. All those decks tend to build up a fairly scary board position. So to not see any Flame Strike, I would be pretty surprised by, but to see 2 of them, I'd be really surprised by as well.
We saw 2 Blizzards, we saw Frost Nova, so there certainly is still plenty of board freeze and board clear. And Georgia State just going to keep building up this board as much as possible, and there's a Blizzard coming into hand for Duke.
It's pretty necessary at this point. Yeah, Pit Snake making very little impact this game. Now here's the problem with the Blizzard, though, is that they still need another AoE. They have 2 Doomsayers sitting in hand. They'd love to get those online. If they don't defend themselves, they are dead to Bloodlust. If they Blizzard now, are the Doomsayers going to be dead in hand? You know, the fact that they drew 2 Ice Blocks, they drew 2 Ice Lances, that they used their coin, those are now starting to impact this game.
Well, if Duke were to go for Blizzard this turn, then they would likely need to find a second Blizzard or Frost Nova on the following turn.
Still a lot of draws that could help if they Blizzard. I mean,
It's true.
I'm thinking the Blizzard needs to happen this turn.
I mean, it clears off 4 of the minions. That's pretty good.
This is where the turns get really big for Georgia State, though. Jade Chieftain, they have the backup to a Doomsayer turn. There's no Ice Block down. Duke doesn't have Alex Straza. This is looking like bad news for Duke. You know, the one thing they didn't want to see was 9 power on the board. Big things hurt Freeze Mage a lot.
Just unfortunate that they haven't been able to check that board state yet this game. It's they seemed like they had a really nice start, but a Frost Nova early on to combine with a Doomsayer could have given them back their initiative.
I think it was that coin. I really do.
Yeah, I think if they'd kept it, they could have gone
Think about
Nova
it.
Blizzard Doomsayer.
Coin Doomsayer this turn. That would have forced Georgia State to be on the Hex game plan. That
Yeah.
would have kept Jade Chieftain from hitting the board. Suddenly it looks like they're ahead.
Then Duke can go ahead and Emperor.
They could play that Emperor Doomsayer turn that they had. Which honestly
That
would have been really
pretty
good this
sweet.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose Duke could have just... Oh, they had to... They had
Yes.
to give up some card in their hand on that coin turn.
So now, Forgotten Torch and Roaring Torch are down. There's 1 Roaring Torch left in the deck. 1 Fireball is down. They have 1 Frostbolt, 1 Roaring Torch, 1 Fireball, 2 Ice Lance. That's their burn that's left. So if Georgia State could just keep them on the back foot and keep them using burn spells defensively, they will cruise control to victory.
Yeah, and you said it. Duke, because they have 2 copies of Forgotten Torch, they can afford to use a little bit of their burn as removal. But there comes to that, that critical point where if you use too much of your burn, you simply don't have enough in deck, even with Evolved Kobold, to be able to kill your opponent. Not to mention the mid-range Shaman running Healing Wave and Jinyu Water Speaker. So
Yeah, it's normally using the burn, your opponent just runs out of big minions at some point. That's what Jade doesn't do. They don't run out of minions at some point. Or rather, it seems like they don't. They certainly do, but we're a long ways off of that. There's still Aya Blackpaw in this deck. There's still likely Bran. We saw N'Zoth in there earlier. There's a lot of stuff left.
Speak to me.
Duke can stall for a couple turns, but
They're just not getting the pan out they need. There's
Freeze
Alex,
Mage with
but
4 cards in hand, 5 cards in
the
hand.
block is getting popped before the Alex is hitting. That's the trouble turn.
Yeah, just not the pan out that Duke needed.
Now, the thing that's a little bit curious here is they have to check the secret first. So through Ice Barrier, they wouldn't pop if they don't use Bloodlust. So they check first with 1 minion. Then when they see that it's Ice Block, then figure out how to pop them at 1. Boom, got it. And that should be all they wrote.
Georgia State making quick work popping that block, and it looks like they are going to take game number 3. Duke with no way to come back here. I mean, they can stall for one more turn, but that's going to be it. No way to clear the board and increase your health total on the same turn.
Yeah, even if they drew Evolved Kobold in this spot, because they don't have the Emperor discount, it's only 19 damage from hand.
Be a way.
Yeah, Jade Shaman may not have the late game Jade power of the Druid, but
so Ice
still
Block
very
here,
strong.
Roaring Torch to 22, Hero Power 21. No, they're not even close. I was trying to find anything to do here. What about like Ice Block Emperor Thorson? They would have 6. Oh, they don't have Frostbolt. That's the key.
Yeah, they've got 2 Ice Lances, but they don't have Frostbolt. So that is going to be game number 3 in the favor of Georgia State's mid-range Shaman.
Their absolute best hope in that situation was Emperor Thorson on discount, Arcane Intellect into Evolved Kobold Frostbolt. But then they're 1 mana off of landing the full chain at that point with the Emperor discount. But if they had that, that would be enough to
Would
win.
it have been 28?
Yes, there is a line
with
that gets
Roaring
in there.
Torch, Frostbolt, double Ice Lands, and the Evolved Kobold off of the Arcane
But
Intellect.
they need 11 mana to do that full combo because they're not discounting Frostbolt or Evolved Kobold in that situation, or an Arcane Intellect to play. So I mean, they're really close to like having the line to victory. But that's part of what makes Freeze Mage such a difficult deck to pilot. Is you have to see the ways that you win the game, no matter how unlikely they are, and then just buy yourself enough time. That's why that deck requires experience, and more so than just about anything else, is because of all those situations. It's a lot less about understanding fundamentals of the game, a lot more about that.
Well, and it's also a testament to just how strong the deck is. The potential reach is very high with the Evolved Kobold in the build, even though the combo Druid was able to armor up out of range. The mid-range Shaman had a lot of heal. You can still burn your opponent down from 30 very easily with the right discounts. Just unfortunately didn't work out that way for Duke. So now Georgia State is up 2-1, and we have our first tweet of the day to feature on the stream. Let's see what it is. This one comes to us from Mr. Verbal Coffee. It says, what's your go-to snack or drink when playing Hearthstone?
I'm a big coffee fan.
Yeah?
Not going to lie. I've been on a completely different eating program lately. Anyone who's followed my content for a while may see, lost about 100 pounds so far. So my eating's very restricted. So coffee's my thing right now. A lot of coffee.
Yeah, I always start my day with a cup of coffee. So, grab a cup of coffee, play some Hearthstone that way. But usually, if I'm playing a lot of Hearthstone at home, I'm usually streaming when I'm doing it. And in that case, drink a lot of water or unsweetened iced tea. And I actually eat a lot of clementines, like the little, sweet oranges.
Okay, yeah.
You just, something easy to eat while you're streaming. You can still talk. It's not super messy. Yeah. So that's our go-to snacks and drinks. Thank you so much for your question. If you have any questions that you want to ask us, let us know what you think about the tournament and who you're rooting for. Tweet at Team Tespa. Go on Facebook /Team Tespa. If your question gets chosen to be featured on stream, then you are the proud recipient of the Dalaran Flame card back. You do not receive the artist's rendition, but it is beautiful. Both the picture and the actual card back.
Contrary to popular belief, I am not the artist of the Dalaran Flame card back.
No, it's unfortunate. They had somebody else make it, but you have done it great justice here on that piece of paper with my pink marker pen. So now Georgia State just left with that Warlock, and Duke still needs to find a win with the Freeze Mage. How does Freeze Mage line up against, a Reno Warlock?
I'd say typically it works pretty well. The 2 major threats you're worried about are Twilight Drake and Mountain Giant. And outside of that pressure, you have a lot of time. Plus, the nature of the Warlock's hero power is that it's kind of working against it in this matchup, where you threaten lethal with a single burn spell on 1 turn. You throw a fireball at their face, and suddenly they have to worry about how they navigate the rest of the game. It's very easy for them to die from hand. And none of the tools really interact super well on Georgia State's side with the nature of Duke's deck. They're very reckless with their resources, and their game plan is simply to hit lots of burn spells. So Their major game plan is to not have to use Reno Jackson until after they've seen Alexstrasza. Their major goal is to land that full heal and take care of Alexstrasza in one turn. If they can't do that and they don't have the pressure down, that's usually game for Duke.
Well, pretty much all of Georgia State's AoE and removal is going to be kind of useless in this game. Duke's not building up a board state. The most they're ever going to have is Acolyte of Pain plus.
Thinking about the Dirty Rat already. And this is a matchup where it can work. You know, there's Doomsayers, there's Loot Hoarders, there's Acolytes of Pain. The pressure is real, but there's the disaster that strikes if Alexstrasza, if Emperor Thorson, if there's an Antonidas in the build. They saw the Forgotten Torches, so they could probably rule that out. But even Doomsayer's a bad hit at this point. I'd say about a little over half the minions are negative, and that's if you count Acolyte of Pain as a positive outcome, which it's not.
No, because then it guarantees 2 draws into the rat.
For free.
Yeah, well, plus, you know, coin Dirty Rat here would just throw off completely the rest of Georgia State's curve. They've got Twilight Drake in hand. They can life tap a couple of times, drop down that Drake, and then curve out into a coin into a 6-drop. That's looking like that's going to be their better game plan.
Yeah. The common situations to think about playing Dirty Rat on 2 are, number one, when you're desperate in the matchup, when your deck is at such a liability that you almost can't afford to not take risks. If you don't take risks, the game goes as intended and you lose. Or in situations like Control Warrior, for instance. Say you're playing against an aggro shaman and Flame Wreath Faceless is a possibility to hit. Sometimes you can Dirty Rat out the Flame Wreath and just execute it on the following turn. In general, that card is about timing to disrupt your opponent's combo much more than it is about a 2-mana 2/6 taunt.
And you'd like to guarantee yourself when you play Dirty Rat that you have a way to remove anything that comes down. If it is the best possible case, then maybe you don't have to use it. But if it is the worst case scenario and an Alexstrasza would come down out of this Dirty Rat, Georgia State would need some form of backup to be able to remove that. They don't have it, so
in this matchup. They have Twilight Drake.
Yeah, it's good enough for now.
Pretty good.
Save the rat and maybe bait out the Alexstrasza the turn before your opponent wants to use it.
Tell you what, Doomsayer's still really good into this situation, though. Duke doesn't necessarily need to couple Doomsayer with, you know, a Frost Nova, an Ice Lance, or a Frostbolt to make it super effective. In this matchup, Georgia State only has a couple of cards that are actually going to kill it in this spot, and that means it's denying them life tap or it's denying them development. So Doomsayer, no matter what, getting the job done here. You know, Crazed Alchemist, that would be a situation where
yes, that would be very good here.
Georgia State, that's a good time Dirty Rat, too, is save it for when you see Doomsayer. Try to pick off one of those key cards. Whoa, that's a good one.
Well, now Georgia State knows that if they build up a large enough board state, it will be safe from the second Doomsayer, but this is just giving Duke so much time to get exactly what they need.
And you can see now they're feeling it.
They're doing the Freeze Mage dance.
When Freeze Mage works out, it's such a strong deck. But you don't always get these draws. They have a ton of damage. They're discounting almost every key card. And Emperor Thorson is not immediately checked on table. And in Georgia, now they pick up Alexstrasza. And in Georgia State's hand, there's actually no way to kill the Emperor Thorson right now. If Duke plays that and Georgia State doesn't draw the right card, it's sticking around for 2 turns. You play it.
I mean, they're trying to think through all of their options.
They have been very reluctant to play Acolyte of Pain in dangerous situations, and here it's a very good Acolyte of Pain turn, but it's a way better Emperor turn.
It's just so good. You get discounts on 4 of your key burn spells, and your Alexstrasza.
You unlock everything in a way that Georgia State doesn't handle well. This was the turn for it.
Because it's not immediately killed. This is as good as it's going to get.
This is another good lesson learned here from Duke, too. They have made some mistakes with their Acolyte's Pain in the previous games. They're not letting that get to them. They thought about it. They went, you know what? It's just a great Emperor turn. Forget about the past. Let's learn from it and move forward. Can't dwell on it.
I have no time for games.
And that's pretty great news for Duke.
Ooh.
How much damage do they have here? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. That's without the Blood Mage.
6, 12, 15, 19, 24?
So if they, I mean, this should be game. They should, I think, simply go face in this spot, set up Ice Barrier, maybe draw some cards with Acolyte, but hang on to the Blood Mage, discount everything, and just have enormous burst from hand. If they get all these discounted and save them again, they have 12, 13, 14, 15, 19 plus 4. They have 23, 24 damage from hand with Blood Mage.
And that's before, if they pick up second Frostbolt, second Ice Lance, either of the Roaring Torches, which they could fit in.
And they're completely safe. There's not a combination of cards from Georgia State that they die to.
Yeah, there's absolutely no reason.
Well, there is, but it's virtually impossible.
There is a combination. It's not going to
I
happen.
think you just frost over here, too. Oh, my.
Man.
Yeah, that's game. First seed game number 5.
Okay. It's nice to see Freeze Mage work out. You're certainly at the mercy of your draws in a lot of cases, but this was pretty much the ideal for the Freeze Mage. This was the matchup that certainly they wanted, but
I think their
it was
opening
pretty
hand,
good.
their opening hand might have beaten almost anything out there.
Yeah.
They just, this is part of the power of Freeze Mage too, is that it does have some just win games.
It's one of the decks that can win in any situation, even the most unfavored Freeze Mage versus Control Warrior. You can win. It's very, very hard. It can be done.
You need to draw all of your burn spells and evolve Kobold and draw perfectly and never draw anything dead.
But you can do it.
And then you need to lack some armor stuff, but you can do it.
It's possible.
Yeah. Out of my 3 years of seeing Hearthstone games, I've seen it happen twice.
Only 2 times? You've only seen Freeze Mage beat Control Warrior twice.
I think Forsen has
when they
both
had
of them I've seen, too.
Antonidas, it was a lot more likely.
And here we go. Heaps of burn.
Heaps on heaps.
Just a casual 9 overkill. 10 overkill. With the
Casual
power.
24 burn for 6 mana. Yeah, it's pretty good.
What happens if Emperor Thorson sticks around?
I mean, if you get
love that
2
card.
turns of Emperor in your combo deck, ooh,
I'm going to miss
you're
that
doing
card.
all right. It's enabled so much that without Emperor, think of all the potential we're losing.
That's the thing about it.
Sad.
6 mana 5/5. It's really not that good. It's what Emperor allows players to do. I'm a big fan of when players can do like absolutely disgusting things. Not like Tunnel Trog Totem Golem. That's very good, but it's not like
What are you talking about? That's disgusting.
it's not like sick. When players can just burn someone from 30 to 0 and keep drawing cards and lock down the board, like that's about as sick as you can get.
In the old Patron Warrior versus Handlock matchup, when Handlock could have 2 9/9 taunts on the board and Patron Warrior could, from hand, go through the taunts and kill them. That was some of the most impressive Hearthstone I have ever seen.
I love
that matchup
it.
was beautiful.
Now, Patron, I do agree, was a little bit overpowered. I don't think it had a strong check.
A little bit.
I don't think it had a strong check to it.
Handlock was the biggest check to Patron, and it's still they could still get killed through 2 9/9 taunt giants from 30 health.
I think my
It was
favorite
stupid.
thing about that deck ever was that Firebat found out if you had 3 fresh Sludge Belchers on the board and they didn't have a minion out, that they actually didn't have the time to kill you because of how long it took for all the animations
The
to
animations
finish
just
and
took
get
too
through
long.
3 Sludge
That's
Belchers.
funny.
I was like, wow, it's not a terrible game plan.
It's
It's kind of how
in some cases it's better than your other options.
I mean, it's kind of how Control Warrior beat the old Anything Can Happen decks when they had old Murkai in them. Is your goal was to save your Sludge Belchers, get to a safe enough armor total to live through the first Anything, you brawl it away, and then you armor up, you live through the second one just barely, and then that can be enough. Or you can dam 2 Sludge Belchers down before they get to the Anything turn, and you get the double brawl going. It was a really weird dance.
It
But
was tough. I
once you
lived
figured
that
it
dance.
Once you figured it out and you had experience with it, the Warrior won that matchup a lot.
Well, regardless, we're going to be losing a lot of combo potential with the loss of Emperor Tharson. This was our tribute to Emperor for the
The
week.
current combo potential. I'm looking
Yeah, okay.
forward to seeing
Wow.
what Quest can bring.
That's true. Quests. There's still 8 quest cards that we have not seen. There's a lot of potential there.
Plus 9 class legendaries.
That's
after
true.
that.
That's
Can't wait
true.
for Ankoro. So this matchup, this is the disaster one for Duke. This is what Georgia State's looking for. The game plan for Duke is to win the board via very health-efficient minions. Now, it takes a bit for that to get online. Georgia State's deck is based around hard removal spells, Doomsayer, Blast Crystal Potion, Siphon Soul, Twisting Nethers to clear, and then their own health-efficient minions, Twilight Drake, Mountain Giant, The difference is Georgia State has a natural card draw engine with their hero power. Duke simply keeps their minions alive. If this game goes at all to parity, Georgia State is massively favored. Duke has to find a way to pressure Georgia State.
Well, this certainly isn't the hand that they want to be able to pressure Georgia State. It's a lot of situational cards, a lot of tech choices here.
Yeah, it's really tough for Acidic Swampu's Defender of Argus, Netherspite Hysterian, Netherspite Historian to really get the job done. It's Hysteria when Nosdormu hits.
Oh gosh, yes. Netherspite Hysteria.
Did I just accidentally design a card?
I think yes. I think you did. Maybe we should pitch that.
We need a card that creates hysteria. Yogg-Saron.
Yogg-Saron.
Touche.
Yogg-Saron, Hysteria's End.
And this is right from Duke, I think, as well. In this situation, they're simply hoping that they draw, ideally, a 3-mana card to fit their curve. That will give them a lot of pressure, but that Doomsayer going to take that hope away.
Cabal Songstealer coming into the hand.
It is a good tech choice. That is one way for them to actually fight against Twilight Drake, where there normally is zero way to do it.
Do you play the Netherspite and just try to find some bigger dragon this turn? How valuable is a 1/3 body?
It's a good question, but is there a potential that maybe you save that for Bran? Or maybe you keep that in hand and hope that Georgia State is forced into a Draxus turn at some point? One of their fringe ways to win is hit a Nefarian from Netherspite Historian and then hit a Sacrificial Pact. That is a real win condition for them. And honestly, that speaks to how desperate they are in the matchup.
I was just going to say that says a lot about this matchup. If you're hoping that you get Nefarian from Netherspite and Sacrificial Pact from Nefarian.
Duke would have drawn their Cabal Talon Priest too. So if Georgia State didn't have that Doomsayer, they actually might have had some game here. Suddenly, Twilight Drake's getting value before the Cabal Songstealer hits, and that's disaster. I think it's got to be Defender of Argus here.
Okay. So your Talon Priest goes up to a 4/5. You kill the Ooze.
I think you take your damage. I'm not really sure. Because they do need to pressure Georgia State a lot, which is going to inherently mean taking risks.
Operative's a great one.
If they're doing this, that means they're taking the trade on the Ooze. Because their main goal is just to keep a minion on board so they can land the Cabal Songstealer.
Well, Songstealer into a 4/2 Drake certainly isn't what you would like to be using it for, but Duke doesn't have a lot more options here, unfortunately.
Definitely not what you envisioned. I mean, maybe they use the Defender of Argus instead. Maybe save the Cabal Talon Priest for like Sylvanas. Sylvanas also a very nightmare card for Duke to see. There's very few ways for them to trade that off profitably.
Yeah, I guess you have to think what's more valuable.
Really interesting here. Because that'll get buffed by Siphon Soul. It'll get buffed by Duke's hero power. Huh.
I mean, that actually could represent a reasonable threat.
Yeah,
2 heals, that's a 5/2.
Could just be a 3. Could just be a small-time Buccaneer.
Yeah, that's certainly not bad. Duke is just going to ignore that Drake, drop down the Operative.
Emperor Thaurissan is really good. That's a problem that Duke has this matchup too. It's not that they can't get value, it's that they often just don't have the time to do it. So if they land an Emperor Thaurissan discount, that could really change the way that their responses are functioning. Shadow or Death being 3 mana means on turn 7, when you're seeing Sylvanas sometimes, when you're seeing Emperor Thaurissan from your opponent, you can't play it and play an Azure Drake. Well, how suddenly you can.
It can make a big difference.
Plus, it's just a 5/5. Stats are very important.
It's just something mana efficient to do on the following turn.
Yep. All the rest of their plays look pretty bad to me.
Unless you want a Drake on 6.
I think they're just thinking about it to not give any signals away. If you act too quickly, maybe Georgia State sees something's up.
Yeah. Conceal as much information as possible.
Yep. Another thing to note is that Georgia State has Harrison Jones tacked into their deck. That's a dead card in this matchup, other than just the fact that it's a 5/4. It's pretty bad otherwise. Curious to see if that can be a liability in this game.
Well, the Emperor challenges both cards on board, gives you 7 mana worth of reduction.
Yeah, you're not super happy the Emperor's dying on board, but
Eh.
I'll take it.
You got it off of your 5 mana 5/6 anyway.
If they draw Bran, they're going to be in good shape. All those extra cards. They got to keep up with life tap somehow. And I think that means extra mana right now.
Yeah, the Priest can absolutely outvalue if they get the tools. It's tough, but Bran Operative, Bran Drake, Bran Argus, these are all ways that they can get it done.
Jiraxis is usually the final say in a situation like that. And that's, again, part of what makes the matchup incredibly difficult is just the inevitability that card provides. But they also have to be concerned with their life. Have they seen any combo pieces?
They saw Leroy. No?
No,
They
that
played
was-
Leroy.
Yeah. Oh, that's something that we haven't really touched on is if Duke sees Harrison Jones, that may start to pull the combo idea away from their mind.
That's true. If you see unusual tech cards, you're thinking, well, either they took something valuable out or maybe they're just not running combo and instead they went for anti-weapon class tech choices.
Yeah. This is kind of the exact turn I'm talking about, too. Normally, they would have been relegated to Wormrest agents here. Suddenly, they can get Wormrest, Azure Drake, and a Shadow Word Death in.
Start to build up that board again.
Yeah.
It's still relatively negligible as far as the damage they can provide here, but it's something.
Ooh, Northshire Cleric's an important one, too. This board right now fairly resilient to what Georgia State has. If they can land a good turn with Defender of Argus and Northshire Cleric, that could be a big difference. We got a game here.
Duke's making it interesting. No, it's certainly not favored for the Priest, but we saw just a couple of weeks back. Priest dominated in this matchup because of those high-value cards.
Georgia State here looking to set up a Hellfire turn, but this is where Duke is kind of in their wheelhouse, honestly, is when they can fight through boards like this and then have something big on board to live through the Hellfire. That's usually a big deal for them. So I'm curious to see where exactly they go with this turn, but this is starting to shape up to look like it might even be Duke favored from this spot.
This is a really tough turn. There's a lot of potential options that they can decide to go with. Defender of Argus gives them nice trades on the Imp Gang boss and the Light Warden, makes them susceptible to Hellfire. Cabal Songstealer takes some value away from the Imp Gang boss,
Someone injured?
makes the rest of your plays a little bit more awkward.
Yeah, I like the Defender of Argus here. I think it's just too clean.
Yeah, the pain is great.
That is really interesting that they're choosing to do it this way, though. I think I would have liked to see a double trade on board and them pressure down the Defender of Argus and keep the Azure Drake around in this situation. Now suddenly Hellfire is a fairly big punish, and they get to keep a 3-2 around, but I don't think it's nearly as big as it could have been. Wow. His hand's looking great, though. Draconic Operative and Azure Drake in the same turn. I mean, would Georgia State have used Twisting Nether in that spot? They Hellfired very quickly. They didn't even consider it. If I'm in Duke's spot, I'm taking Twisting Nether out of Georgia State's range.
Yeah. I'm saying they don't have it. Oh, Power Overwhelming's kind of interesting. Georgia State's at 15. Duke's going to have board control here.
I think the big thing about the Power Overwhelming is that it's damage that Georgia State doesn't normally anticipate.
You don't anticipate hardly any damage coming from your Dragon Priest's hand.
Like
The extent. Corruptor.
Corruptor is about the most you expect in Burst. So having a Power Overwhelming could really change that. But the Dirty Rat, I mean, that can disrupt combos and stuff too. So the Dirty Rat kind of tells me that they think that Georgia State's playing combo.
Well, I like Duke saving their last dragon in hand. Certainly they have a couple more in deck, but keeping the Azure Drake in hand and going with the Wormrest agent means that Netherspite Historian is active, Draconic Operative's active, their second Corruptor's active. It's just safer.
Now this is a really curious turn here from Georgia State. They are not in the business of using their Power Overwhelming. They want to combo Duke, and they want to do it as quickly as possible. Ragnaros is unplayable this turn. They got to find a way to start dealing with the board pressure. Does that mean that they Kazakus, look for a big potion, and then Power Overwhelming Shadow Flame, Or does it mean they try to find risk somewhere else? Maybe you forego the combo this game and rely on value. Just use Leroy to Shadow Flame. Save the Faceless Manipulator for value later on. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on this turn, and Georgia State, this is where their fork is in the road, and they're going to have to make a decision on how they're going to win the game this turn. Whatever play they make is going to be a statement to that.
Their combo will not be online until they get Emperor. But if they had Emperor, they would have 20 from hand. Kazakus getting a 5-mana potion could potentially clear this board this turn. But the Leroy Shadow Flame, well, Georgia State just wins the inevitability battle with the Lord Draxus a lot of the time.
It's the ideal situation for them. So they went with a 5. 4 damage, all minions gain 7 armor. This is kind of a desperate play. I mean, that just leaves around at 5 damage.
Ooh.
That cuts into your potion a lot, and another operative gets drawn for Duke. I think Duke's taking the lead.
They might just have been able to edge out Georgia State in this pretty unfavored matchup.
The Kazakus play says that Georgia State wants to set up the Leroy lethal this game. They're starting to sacrifice increments of value. Duke picked up Dirty Rat from the Draconid operative. Imagine if they find another one. Or a Jiraxis or a Bran.
Or a Bran.
Wow.
That Bran plus Corruptor, that's 6 on the following turn.
Oh, I'm looking at the Jiraxis too. I mean, if combo gets pulled, that's a way to win. This is tough. It's very rare that I would advocate not taking the Jiraxis in this spot, but Duke is in the lead.
They've got 10 on board right now. They can get in for an additional damage on the following turn. There's a chance they can close this out with the Bran Corruptor. That's what they're looking at here.
There's a risk to Ragnaros in this spot. If Ragnaros just misses the 2 minions, Georgia State loses. If they have to Leroy Shadow Flame this turn, they're going to wonder why they didn't do it the previous turn.
Then Duke has the option of Bran Drake, draw 2 more cards. They've got another Nether Spite in the deck. They've got their own Bran.
Did they get Draconid Operative from the Nether Spite?
They got 1 from it, yes.
Yeah, so they have
So
another
we've
one
seen
left.
all 3.
Oh, is that all 3 now?
Yes.
You're right, you're right.
It was the...
Uh-oh. That's game.
Oh.
Duke, fist pumps, high fives, Bran and Blackwing Corruptor.
That's going to be the unsuspecting burst from hand. Duke has managed to take an unfavorable matchup. They won their game with the Freeze Mage, now the Priest against the Reno Lock. 6-0 match score for Duke in this tournament.
And that's just incredible. I mean, winning the unfavored matchup is that is a very difficult one to win. But Georgia State, they drew a lot of utility early on. They drew Faceless and Leroy very early. They had Harrison Jones, their tech card that's dead in that matchup, very early on. The thing to look at there is the game plan from Georgia State. Did they need to win with combo? That's really the question I have. I respect that they had saved that to try to go for that turn, but they did have a lot of value stacked in hand. Could they have deviated?
And I kind of wonder, because Georgia State's hand was relatively small, all things considered, for Reno Warlock that entire game. We saw them very early on go with the coin Twilight Drake. Yes, the Twilight Drake is a huge threat against Priest. But the Reno Warlock is so favored that if you just maybe life tap that one more time, you don't have to use coin, gives your hand a little bit more flexibility, you get an extra draw. The Drake is still going to be fantastic. I don't know, maybe they jumped the gun a little bit and could have stretched this out, tried to get their own value out of life tap, maybe a little bit more.
They did land the Drake before Cabal Talon Priest, or Cabal Songstealer was available
That
too.
was important.
I think that if they landed that right into that tech choice, that could end the game for them. So I liked everything they did, and just the tough turn of right the turn previous, they had to figure out how they were going to win. And they decided with holding Leroy Faceless Manipulator, that pigeonholed the rest of their plays.
Yeah, you wanted to see him break up the combo, go with the Leroy Shadow Flame, and try to extend the game, win with inevitability with the Jiraxis.
It hurts when that's a major win condition of your deck.
It's not what you want to see. It's not the position that the Reno Warlock should be put in. But in any case, they were, and Duke managed to edge out that series 3-2. We do have an interview with our winners. It's Duke University. Congratulations, guys. Fantastic job.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Hey.
All right, so tell us a little bit about how you put together your lineup. The Freeze Mage is certainly something that we haven't seen in quite a while.
Yeah. So we already qualified for playoffs last time, and then they told us we're going to be on stream. So we wanted to do something a bit novel, a bit cool. And I've loved Freeze Mage ever since it was back in the wild days before Standard even came out. And Wolfgang's also quite a good Freeze Mage player. So we thought maybe we could throw people for a loop, don't be predictable, and bring that Freeze Mage.
Yeah, I think it definitely threw me for a loop. And then what also threw me for a loop was taking the Warlock matchup with Priest, of all things. That's a crazy difficult one. Talk to us a little bit about your school. What's the esports like at Duke?
Yeah, so we actually have a pretty decent esports scene. I used to play League of Legends with the Duke team, and I know they still play, and they're a lot better than I am. And also, we have a Tespa chapter, but it's a developing chapter right now. I don't think it's been fully finalized, and the senior who's running it is going to leave next year. So if any Duke students are watching who are interested in esports, they should talk to Francisco. Shout out to Francisco to keep developing the Tespa chapter and the esports in Duke.
Good on Francisco. Well, you never know. You guys are 6-0 right now in this tournament. You're doing fantastic. Maybe you will help develop the TESPA chapter, just by having great success in this tournament. But tell us a little bit about how you formed your team. How did you guys come together and decide that you wanted to compete in this tournament?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually friends with our third teammate, Dennis, who couldn't be here today. And he's the one who put me in contact with Wolfgang. Yep. He said Wolfgang's been playing Hearthstone since the closed beta, and he's a player who has a lot of skill and who is excited about the game. So we got in contact together and started our team, and we've had good results so far.
I'll say.
Where is Dennis? What's Dennis up to tonight? I hope he's got a good excuse.
I think Dennis is swimming right now. He's in our swimming team, the Duke swimming team.
He helped us create this team, and then he realized that every Monday at 8 p.m. he has swimming. So he could take it to any of our games.
Oh my God, he Dennised so hard.
Hey, health's important.
That's true. That's true.
Important. Yeah.
Swimming it's a good excuse. So I guess we'll let Dennis get away with it this time. Is there anything else you guys want to say? Anybody maybe you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, shout out to anyone from home who's watching. Omar, Karim, really great to have you guys supporting. And anyone from Duke who's watching as well. I already shouted out Francisco. Thanks to everyone who's supporting us and our fans.
Yeah. Shout out to anyone who's loving Hearthstone and loving Duke University.
And also shout out to the casters. We're huge fans of you guys. It's crazy to actually talk to you right now.
I gotta say,
thank you, man. I appreciate it.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, congratulations, guys. 6-0. You have one more week of Swiss, but you are guaranteed a spot in the next phase of this tournament. Best of luck moving on.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
That's 3 total fans that I have now.
We have 3 fans, Nathan.
I had 1 from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
2
and now we have
today.
2. We don't know about Dennis. Dennis is sort of like the question mark on that all, but
that may have been the difference between Holy Smiting Face turn 1 and not.
It could be. Could be the difference between Arcane Missiles Phase 1.
Yep. Could have been.
Maybe. You never know.
6-0.
That's really impressive. That's incredibly impressive. And I think the man bun was real. So
it's definitely real.
I mean, they've got a lot going for him.
You could, just look at him. It just makes sense.
Just makes sense. We have another tweet to bring up on stream, so let's see what our next lucky recipient of the $1 on Flame card back has to say. This one coming to us from @MatadorDog. After being on the road so long casting, what are you most looking forward to when you get home?
I got 2 words. Hot tub.
Really? Not cute puppy?
That's a big one.
Girlfriend? It's 1 word, but...
It can be 2 words. It just depends on how you say it. It'd be kind of weird to make it 2 words, I feel like.
Yeah.
That's family, though. That would be 1 word.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Hot tub.
Even cute puppy, I guess, is family. Yeah. Well, I don't have a hot tub. I don't have a puppy. But I would like to get some sleep. I think that would be great.
Some sleep. That's 2 words.
Some sleep. Fantastic.
Perfect.
And I have a cat.
More Hearthstone.
More Hearthstone.
I play way too many games. I just can't stop.
You just can't stop.
It's only 3 a.m. I mean,
jam a couple more. I was watching Streamer Showdown while I, wired my data from my phone to my laptop this morning. I was playing some games while I was watching it. I'm like, all right, test my Hearthstone knowledge, test my arena knowledge. I didn't have any more devices, but if I did, you never know. Never know.
Could be related in some way.
There's only So much that you can do with so much time. Thank you so much for your tweet, Matador. If you have anything that you want to ask us, any teams that you want to give shout outs to, let us know what you think about this tournament. Tweet at Team Tespa. Go on Facebook /Team Tespa. If your question is picked to be featured on the stream, then you are the proud recipient of the Dalaran Flame card back. It's free. It's pink. It's real nice. Take our word for it.
I love it. Nothing beats free.
Nothing beats free. Let's take another look at our schedule for the day. Our first match is just wrapped up. Duke University 3-2 over Georgia State. A fantastic job in some unfavored matchups for them, but both Duke and Georgia State are through to the next phase of this tournament. Coming up next, it's going to be NC State taking on Texas, and both of these teams still have yet to seal their way into the next part of this tournament. So we'll be right back with that matchup right after this. Don't go anywhere.